My name is Lisa Powers, and this is my story. I grew up in a Christian home. I grew up at Trinity Church with many of these wonderful people that are here. I remember vividly making the decision to be baptized, and was baptized on my golden birthday when I turned 10 on February 10th. I graduated from a Christian school, and I truly couldn't be more grateful that God laid that foundation in my life. I was very excited though to move out of my parents' home, to be able to do what I wanted, when I wanted, how I wanted. So I moved out 2 weeks after my open house. I wanted to be able to have my boyfriend over whenever I wanted, however I wanted. I didn't have much regard for what God wanted in my life at this point. I wasn't going to church. I wasn't involved with anybody who had a particularly positive impact on my life. I was truly enjoying the party lifestyle and all of the things that brought along with it. Shortly after having my heart annihilated by my first boyfriend, I met my now ex-husband. I was worried about the almighty dollar. I was really excited that he was able to provide what I thought was security in my life, that I could have what I wanted when I wanted it. I wanted that security. I based my value in that. I based my value in who I was with, in the relationships that I had. Unfortunately, when we lay out our plans that way, sometimes we lose. We got married in May of 2006. I got pregnant in October of 2006, and he left via text message in February of 2007. That leaves you with a lot of shame, a lot of guilt. That was never anything that I anticipated for my life. I was concerned about how other people were going to view me, how being an unwed mother was going to look after I was divorced. I think I was extremely blessed that God had brought me to River's Edge shortly before my husband had left. He knew that that was going to be exactly what I needed. When that had happened and you kind of find yourself at the bottom, you find what's going to give you peace, and his word brought me peace. It was a soothing balm to my soul. I clung tightly to the people that I knew at River's Edge. I started in Alexis King's Bible study, and she really showed me how to not be sort of discouraged, or how to not hold all of it inside and not share it. And she had shared a verse with me in regards to, if we don't sound our trumpet for help, how are they going to know? How are they going to know how to pray? How are they going to know how to help? So I found my way back to God in a way that I had never anticipated. In March of 2008, I met my now husband, Tim. I was very hesitant at first. I was very closed off. But he continued to pursue, which I'm super glad that he did. The relationship that he forged with Michael was beyond anything I could have ever anticipated. The type of father he is incredible. He has added so much joy into our lives. He was a gift from God that I didn't necessarily expect, but I am extremely, extremely thankful for. Doing it God's way. We weren't going to move in together. We weren't going to sleep together. We weren't going to do any of those things that sometimes people find to be common, but nope, I've done it Lisa's way, and now I'm going to do it God's way, and I couldn't have made a better decision in that. Tim used Michael to ask me to marry him and my parents, and it was truly a joyous occasion. Shortly thereafter, we had found out that we couldn't have kids of our own. It was devastating. It was something I wrestled with God with for quite some time. And yet, again, and coming full circle to what God wanted out of my life, and delving again, into the Word, and then being ridiculously blessed to be able to have Caleb join our family in February of 16. God continues to work on me. He continues to build my trust in Him, not in the things of this world, not in the people of this world, but in Him. And I'm extremely grateful that He will never stop working on me. My name is Lisa Powers, and this is my story.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. A lot of good sound bites there, but I tried it Lisa's way. Now I thought I'd try it God's way. Pretty good summary for this series we've been in, especially for the story in the Old Testament we're going to today. But as we look back on stories, their memories, how many have ever done creative memories? This is big, like, what, in the 50s? No, really, it's like 90s. Oh, yeah, 90s. It's recent. And it's really cool. Patsy did some of the best ones in the world. And, here's Ryan and Corey on a torpedo with Kelsey in the water in front of them. And I think she's pulling them. She's like 3, 2. Which is kind of the normal expression for Kelsey in these things. There's Corey and Kelsey in a little lawn chair. She has his arm around him. He's smiling. That was the last time. Weddings, they're in here, right? It's always the wedding pictures. It's the balls and the leaves, the Christmas parties, 50th anniversary, and those Christmas and 50th anniversaries. Your family did this? We got to get an entire family picture. Patsy's family is like 74. It was miserable. I hated Christmas. I tried to skip it, and they won't let me. Then when you travel, there's a lot of lake pictures and boats. At SeaWorld, the kids were feeding the manta rays so you could pet them there. So it was like 107. So I don't know if I had to go to the bathroom or I just wanted to get away from there. So I walk in, I'm sitting there going, oh, this is air conditioning. It feels really good. I think I'll just sit here for a while. Then I heard 2 ladies talking in there. And they weren't just talking for a second and leaving, home and leaving. They're having this big conversation. So I waited and waited and waited. Said, I'm just going to have to go for it. So I just kind of walked out, washed my hands, walked like nothing was going on, and they're going. And I so expected security to enter at any point with 2 ladies going. The memories. And they're fantastic. And they do tend to be the highlights, don't they? I mean, they're the highlights. So it's something I thought was pretty cool as we put this series together. I appreciate so much the 4 people that have shared on video. Several have offered to do it just because they want to share their story too, which I really appreciate. But they're willing to share some of the moments that might not be in their creative memory book. It's kind of sad those books went away. Everything's digital today. It saves us $1.4 million a year, so I like that. But I'm kind of glad when the kids were little we have those, because a picture is worth 1,000 words. We have a snapshot today of a story that maybe not quite as familiar as Woman at the Well, One Man Born Blind. We're going way back to 2 Kings chapter 5. So we're going to flip back there. We'll have most of the verses up. Just 15 verses. We're going to catch the story of Naaman's wife's servant girl. That's one thing we don't know. We don't know the name of the woman at the well. We don't know the name of the man born blind. We do know that they're 2 of the first people Jesus looked in the eye and said, I'm the Messiah. Unnamed people in specific tough little spots were a couple of the first ones to see Jesus face to face. And Jesus went on record and said, I am that Messiah. I am that man. Pretty amazing. So here's even a less known girl. It's Naaman's wife's servant girl. And we certainly don't know her name. We know hardly nothing about her. But I just tried to picture, and it's changed in the last 2 weeks. We'll just read the story today and let the points jump out of it. And I have 7. So they didn't put them in the bulletin, but there's spacer. If you're trying to space it out, there's 7 moments. I think if Naaman's wife's servant girl was going to tell her story, these would be the moments in it. So go to 2 Kings chapter 5. First bullet will come right from verse 1. The king of Aram had great admiration for Naaman, the commander of his army, because through him the Lord had given Aram great victories. But though Naaman was a mighty warrior, he suffered from leprosy. I think the title on the first page of our Creative Memories is simply, but. Although Naaman was a mighty warrior, he had leprosy. As I think about that, bottom line, I think we all have our buts. I might ask the question this morning, what is your but? It could be personality-wise, and you just always explain it away. Yeah, I'm just kind of impatient, I'm kind of angry. Maybe in relationships, I'm kind of controlling, I'm kind of stressed. Maybe it's addictions. Yeah, I think I'll quit doing it sometime, but I just can't stop. You might be a mighty person, but. So Naaman, our first snapshot. This is the story about a girl, but Naaman's the first character that enters into the story here. And he has a but. So it's as simple as, before we go on, I'm not asking anybody to share it. But stop for a second. If we wrote your story, he was a strapping, good-looking young college man, but she was a loving, adorable mother of 3. But what's your but? Might help the sermon hit home before you're done, if you can finish that sentence this morning. What is your but? Let's read on. Verses 2 and 3. At this time, Aramean warrior raiders had invaded the land of Israel. So this is Aram, the nation right north of Israel. It's where Abraham first moved, and God called him to go to the promised land. He didn't go right to Israel. He went to Aram. Both Isaac and Jacob had to go back up there for family to find their wives. So this country's right there. It's on a map in the back of your Bible if you look. Judea, Israel, Aram. And the king there had raided Israel. Maybe it's part of Israel's judgment at this point. We don't know all the details, but even though he credits the Lord for Naaman's victories, he's actually attacking God's nation. Kind of weird dynamics going on here. But they raided the land of Israel, and among their captives was a young girl who had been given to Naaman's wife as a maid. One day, the girl said to her mistress, "I wish my master would go see the prophet in Samaria. He would heal him of his leprosy." Now, I love this. A young servant girl sharing her story, showing her story, regardless of her circumstances. If this passage was the whole message, I actually made bullets, it'd be a great 3-point sermon. She saw the opportunity, not the oppression. We don't know what it's like for this. We don't know how old she is. This little girl got ripped out of her home and dragged off to another country to be a slave. She probably has every right to be bitter. And when she looks at her mistress, her master, Naaman's wife's husband Naaman, the guy who what? Led the fight down in her country, destroyed her village or whatever he did, and stole her. This is the guy. That's the one she sees an opportunity for. She saw the opportunity, not the oppression. She wished for the best, regardless of the circumstances. But the really cool thing, and if you're writing one thing down per bullet, this is it for number 2, as we meet this servant girl. She knew somebody. You ever hear people use that phrase? Oh, they know somebody. They know a man, right? And my one nephew knows a man for everything. She knew a man. So in that moment of captivity, when she could have been really angry at Naaman for what he had done to her, she said, "I wish my master would go see the prophet. I want to see him healed." And a crazy opportunity. So the question for us here, you know a lot of people, and they have butts. If someone couldn't come up with a butt a minute ago, someone sitting next to you could, right? And you know people, they have butts. So here's the question. Do you know somebody? Do you know somebody that could help them and their butts? Does your God make a difference in your life? Do you think Jesus could help them? If so, the question is, do you wish they'd have a chance to meet Jesus? Do you wish that? And if you really wish that, where does that show up in your day-to-day conversation with them? Hold that thought. It's a good question. Number 3. Do verses 4 through 7. Naaman told the king what the young girl from Israel had said. So he didn't go to the prophet, like she said. He went to the king. Go visit the prophet, the king of Aram told him. I will send a letter of introduction for you. That'll make a difference. Isn't that funny? I'll send a letter. Good for you. I'll send a letter of introduction. So Naaman started out carrying gifts of 750 pounds of silver, 150 pounds of gold, and 10 sets of clothing. The letter of the king to the king of Israel said, with this letter I present my servant Naaman, who just attacked you. Interesting little thought, doesn't really go into that. I sent my servant Naaman. I want you to heal him of his leprosy. I'll write a letter. I want you to heal him. I'm the king. When the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes in dismay. He said, this man sends me a leper to heal? This is king to king. He said, I'll write a letter. I'll tell him to heal you. So, I'm a king. I don't heal people. He sends me a leper to heal. Am I God that I can live, give life, and take it away? I can see he's just trying to pick a fight with me. So we have the kings and their little banter going on here. And sometimes we simply don't have the answers. We feel that way sometimes when we get engaged in a conversation with our friend and their butt. We'd like to come up with a solution, we just don't have it. And even king to king, bottom line, they did not have it. Fortunately, somehow, word gets straight to Elisha. Elisha is that prophet our sermon girl was talking about. So let's go to verse 8. But Elisha, the man of God, heard the king of Israel had torn his clothes in dismay. I don't know if someone ran through the street saying that. Specific details of Scripture always make me stop. How did that? CNN wasn't there. So it wasn't on the TV, but somehow that word got to Elisha. He sent this message to him. Why are you so upset? Send Naaman to me, and he will learn that there is a true prophet right here in Israel. So Naaman went with his horses and chariots. You kind of picture the whole entourage, kind of cruising down the street to Elisha's house. He went with his horses and chariots and waited at the door of Elisha's house. Picture this. But Elisha sent a messenger out to him. This is the commander of the king of Aram's there with his horses, his chariots. Getting to run a little bit, the king can't help. Hears the name where Elisha is. He drives over there in his chariot, and Elisha sends out a messenger with this message. Go and wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan River, then your skin will be restored and you'll be healed of your leprosy. That seemed a little crazy to Naaman. He said, go wash in the filthy, dirty Jordan River? Are you kidding me? The guy can't even come and talk to me? He wants me to go out and wash? It may be true, and Lisa's story kind of implied it a little bit. Sometimes we don't exactly see what God is up to in his story and how he wants his story to connect to our story. We're not quite sure what he's up to in our life. And it's pretty clear as we read this next verse, that's what Naaman's thinking. So this is not the plan I was thinking about. And sometimes God's plan simply doesn't make sense to us. So we can choose to do it. Lisa said in her video, I done it Lisa's way. Now I was going to do it God's way. Let's see how that's how Naaman responds. So we go to verse 11. I don't have this slide. I just realized when I reviewed it this morning, it was just kind of cut and pasting yesterday, so you don't have this slide. But the 5th bullet would be from verses 11 and 12. So verses 11 and 12. Naaman became angry and stalked away. So middle school girls, just insert that picture here. No offense, middle school girls. Love you. But Naaman became angry and stalked away. I thought he would certainly come out and meet me, he said. I expected him, here are his plans. I expected him to wave his hand over the leprosy, call on the name of the Lord, his God, and heal me. Aren't the rivers of Damascus and the Abana and the Pharpar better than any of the rivers in Israel, certain the Jordan? Why shouldn't I wash in them and be healed? So Naaman turned and went away in a rage. Sometimes we just don't like God's terms. We think we can do it better. Right? He says, that's not what I expected. I don't want some messenger coming out here to watch somebody washing their dirty river. I expected some prophet to walk out there and wave his arms, abracadabra, kumbaya, whatever, and heal me right there, smack. One of Patsy's teachers, they had a little kid, somehow told her that she was married to a pastor. And the little kid said, doesn't her head hurt? And his mom said, what do you mean, doesn't her head hurt? Well, aren't they the ones that always go like that? But apparently that's the house Naaman grew up in, and that's kind of what he pictured. He goes, that's what I expected. Just a prophet stepping out there, and boom. Go wash in the Jordan. We have 2 rivers, at least, way better than those. I'll go wash in those. Well, fortunately, he had some officers or servants around him. They were a little bit smarter. So number 6. Verses 13 and 14. But his officers tried to reason with him. They said this, Sir, if the prophet had told you to do something very difficult, wouldn't you have done it? Kind of funny, again, sometimes we don't expect to do it God's way, because maybe it just seems too easy. We think it should hurt more, be harder, take more effort, cost more money, whatever. Because if he asked you something to do something tough, you would have done it. So you should certainly obey him when he simply says, go and wash and be cured. So Naaman went down to the Jordan River. He dipped himself 7 times as the man of God had instructed. And his skin became as healthy as the skin of a young child. And he was healed. You certainly should obey him. So we have more characters in her story. Now we have Naaman's own servants. And they're going, why question God? Just do it. I think we've seen that thread in the stories that have been shared. Why question God? Just do it. So he did do it, and the results, of course, he was healed. Our 7th point comes in the conclusion, verses 15 and 16. Then Naaman and his entire party went back to find the man of God. They stood before him, and Naaman said, now I know there is no God in all the world except in Israel. So please accept a gift from your servant, which Elisha refused. He said, now I know. How did he get to that point? He had to start with a but. Big problem for him, in his case, leprosy that he couldn't do anything about. Someone cared enough because in their story they had seen God change lives. This little servant girl we know nothing more about wished that her master could be healed. And even then he had to take action on it. Even though it maybe didn't seem like the way he would have done it. He took the letter from the king, went to the king. The king couldn't do anything about it. Nothing I can do. I don't have an answer to this. And then even when he got an answer from the prophet, it wasn't the answer he wanted. It wasn't the one he expected. But when he actually responded and obeyed, he was healed. And bottom line, the story just shouts to me, God is God and we are not. God is God. He's not messing with us. I would argue he didn't give Naaman leprosy to make this scene. Naaman had leprosy. People get diseases. Some of us have diseases. Corey and I were moving a sofa last night in the basement, and I pulled the sofa over my feet and peeled the toenail off that big toe. And that's my story. And that puppy hurts. I said, ouch.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, Corey will tell you, I was pretty calm. I just kind of, never mind. I was going, wow, that really hurts. And ripped a toenail off like that for a while. So I'm not moving much. I'm just kind of standing here in heavy drugs. You know. But when things happen in obedience to God, we get results. And this story amazes me because it all starts with a commander's wife's little servant girl had been ripped out of her hometown and country and into slavery. saying, I wish, because I know somebody, I wish my master can meet him and let him change his life too. So whether it's your butt this morning, or the butt of a really good friend you've been talking about, and they played his sound bites of this message, it could sound really weird. But whether it's a friend that you've been talking to, how much time are you spending not understanding what God's plan is or how God is doing something, or how much time are you spending trying to simply obey God? And figure out how you can trust God to make the difference in your life. The men's breakfast yesterday, I did a video in the word picture, and it is from Matthew 11, when Jesus says, take my yoke on you. I love that word picture. That yoke is a symbol of partnership, the speaker said, because you're in that yoke together. But it's also a symbol of submission. That I don't fully understand God. I don't understand everything Jesus did and why he did it when he did it. But the evidence looks like it's worth tying my story to his story and submitting my story to his story. And I will move, as the speaker said in our video, at his direction. I can't separate if I'm in that yoke. I'll go the same direction as Jesus and at his pace and trust him for the results. We looked at 3 stories so far, and I would like to close with one more right now. Again, celebrating, I think, that when God's way is made clear, we'll never be sorry doing it his way. Take a look.
Hi, my name is Kelsey Bushon, and this is my story. My senior year of high school, I went on a missions trip with Campus Life to Mississippi to do Hurricane Katrina cleanup. And every night we did a Devo, including a student's story. And Trent, my director, also my dad, had asked different students to give their stories, and I never signed up. And Christy, my sister-in-law, was a director at the time, asked me why I didn't sign up, and I said it was because I didn't really feel like I had a story, I didn't have a testimony. But she encouraged me to think about the fact that our testimonies are the story of our life. So everyone has one, and it's just about how God impacted you in that. So as I thought back on my life, I realized that my testimony was really special because finding God at a young age, at 9 I asked God into my life. I really grew in my faith earlier on, so it helped prevent me from making a lot of decisions that some people struggle with in high school. So I became very thankful for that, and that was a big part of my story. It doesn't have to be like this crazy old life transformed into a new life always. Sometimes God can help save you from some of that stuff early on. So big parts of my story are middle school. I had kind of a weird middle school couple years. Kind of all at once, my best friend of childhood decided that she didn't want to be my friend anymore, so that was heartbreaking. And then one of my good friend's dads unexpectedly died, and my grandpa was diagnosed with cancer, and my mom's best friend died in childbirth. So sorting that out in 6th and 7th grade was actually really difficult, and I remember thinking like, okay, you know, my parents say that this God is loving and that he's good, but that was the first time that I really questioned that of, if God is so good, then why are these bad things happening? And it kind of felt like all at once a lot of bad things were happening. So it sounds crazy to debate it that young, but I really remember laying in bed thinking, okay, either my parents are possibly lying and God's not that good, or he is good, bad things just happen. So luckily I chose to believe the second, that God is good and bad things are bound to happen in life, but he wants to help us through that. And that really energized my faith through middle school and high school. So I'm kind of a nerd and I loved high school. I was really involved in campus life and musicals, and I had really good friends, and I just really enjoyed those years. So I really attribute a lot of that to my faith, that I wasn't tempted to make decisions other students were making, and I just was okay being a good kid sometimes. And really my parents, looking back, I think did a good job not just telling us no to doing bad things, quote unquote. Instead, they just modeled out how to live for God and showed us that it was worth it to live for God instead of making those other decisions. So I thank my parents a lot for that. So graduating high school, I felt like my faith was pretty rock solid. I graduated, I went to Huntington University for 3 semesters in Indiana, which was actually my dream school. I'd always wanted to go there. But because of multiple reasons, I transferred home my sophomore year in January. I moved in with my wonderful grandma, and I transferred to Great Lakes Christian College. And honestly, that's where things got a little messy. I kind of found myself in a relationship that wasn't the most healthy. And after 2 years, I just ended up in a place that I really never expected to be. Looking back, I remember thinking, like, I tell girls that, you know, a guy doesn't have to define who you are, and that God loves you no matter what you do. And there I was kind of questioning those very truths. So after that relationship, I kind of felt, I don't know, I felt like I was kind of living a lie a little bit in the way that I had crossed boundaries I said I wasn't going to cross. I started questioning if God could really love me after not really seeking Him first. And I remember just thinking, even journaling, like, who am I and how did I get here? And I think I kind of summed it up as, like, when you know what's clearly right to do and you don't do it, it's spiritually and emotionally draining. So after 2 years of feeling that way, I was just in a not very good place. So luckily, through good friends, I was encouraged to tell my parents and just talk through where I was at with them, and some really good friends came around me and kind of helped me rediscover my faith and get back on track. But I can't say it was always easy. I do remember one night laying in my apartment by myself, just crying to God. It felt like for hours. But just saying that I was angry and frustrated, not really at Him, but just that I had allowed myself to get off track. I think I thought at that time, if you're a good enough Christian, then you won't struggle with things. So the fact that I was struggling with things meant that I wasn't a good Christian. So in that time, I remember hearing my dad preach a sermon on the man who had been lame for 38 years. And Jesus walked up to him and said, "Do you want to get well?" And I love that story, because to ask somebody who had been paralyzed for 38 years if they want to get well seems almost like a joke. Like, of course he wants to get well. He's been paralyzed for 38 years. But my dad just made the point that when we're struggling with something over and over again, sometimes we start to make excuses, or we almost kind of get content in that place. And he just challenged us with the question that if you're in a place of struggle, do you want to get well? And if you do, what steps can you take towards getting well instead of making excuses? And that really was like the wake-up day for me of, like, all right, yeah, I'm done with this. Like, I'm moving forward. I'm gonna get back on track. And it was really encouraging. And I can't say that it all happened overnight, but it's just been a journey getting back to where I want to be, and found my way back to my wonderful husband, who I'm married to now. And I haven't found, or I haven't come to a perfect place. No one really has. But I can say that God is good, and that no matter how far you feel like you've gone, He's always willing and waiting for you to come back. So I think my story has encouraged me in that way, and I like telling students that I work with, that no matter how far you think you've gone, God still loves you, and you can always return. So yeah, I'm Kelsey, and this is my story.